Last time on Astonishing Spider-Man, Spidey took a hit so hard he probably saw the Spider-Verse in reverse. Teaming up with the enigmatic Webhead, they faced off against a monstrous brute with impenetrable skin, infinite rage, and breath so bad it could be classified as a chemical weapon. After a brutal fight, they finally big-brained their way to victory, because if it breathes, it can choke. But just as they caught their breath, Webhead shocked everyone, especially Spidey, with an unexpected kiss. What does this mean for our heroes? Let's dive into the next chapter to find out. Flashback time. Before Spidey was dodging surprise kisses and nearly suffocating monsters, he had a different kind of battle. One that involved no punches, just emotional damage. MJ asking him to do the impossible. "You want me to what?" MJ didn't miss a beat, grinning like she just solved all his problems. "It's so simple. You should stop being Spider-Man." Peter stood there, processing the sheer madness of what he just heard. Meanwhile, MJ doubled down. "Did you think you'd do this forever? There's never going to be a better time. It's the perfect off-ramp." "Lady, he's not merging off the highway. He's Spider-Man. The dude has a lifelong VIP pass to bad decisions and superhero shenanigans." Then came the kicker. "Someone else will stop the crime lord." Oh yeah, because passing the torch to literally no one has always worked out before. Peter couldn't believe what he was hearing. Of all the things MJ could have said, this was the last thing he expected. He threw up his hands, his frustration spilling out. "I can't stop being Spider-Man," he snapped. The very idea was ridiculous. He tried to explain. When someone gains this much power, they have a responsibility. MJ cut him off before he could finish. She'd heard the speech before. Yeah, I know how that saying goes." Her voice softened slightly as she folded her arms. Then she hit him with the real question. "But don't you ever want a normal life?" Peter turned away, staring out at the city skyline. A normal life? That idea felt more foreign than any alien invasion he'd ever faced. "I don't even know what that means anymore," he admitted. "Nothing about me is normal," MJ sighed. She wasn't trying to argue, but she couldn't help thinking about everything Peter had lost, everything he could have been. For a moment, he let the thought sink in, but that was the problem. He could imagine it, and that hurt even more. MJ wasn't done. She could see it. The life Peter could have if he just let go. "You could finally become a scientist. You could be the person who cures cancer." Her voice was filled with hope, like she was painting a future he had never let himself imagine. Peter didn't respond. He didn't need to. She knew that look. He was shutting it out before it could even sink in. "You've helped so many people over the years," she continued, softer now. "But maybe it's time to think about retiring." That snapped him out of it. "Spider-Man can't just retire," he shouted, his frustration boiling over. "No one else can do the things I can do." MJ sighed, gripping the pillow in her lap. "And no one else can do the things you can do with your brain, Peter." She looked up at him, eyes pleading. "The fact that you can stick to walls isn't the only thing special about you." Peter clenched his jaw. He didn't want to hear it. He couldn't hear it. Then she said the words that cut deeper than any villain ever had. "I look at you now, and you're just living the same teenage fantasy you've been living since you were 15 years old." And just like that, she wasn't talking to Spider-Man. She was talking to the kid behind the mask. MJ moved across the room, her voice laced with frustration. She wasn't just talking to Peter. She was challenging the very mindset that had ruled his life. "If I'm just strong enough, fast enough, I can stop all the bad things from happening." She turned to face him, her tone unwavering. "Life doesn't work that way, Peter." There was no anger in her voice, just a truth she knew he wasn't ready to accept. She stepped forward, frustration growing. To her, it was like he was frozen in time, trapped in an endless cycle. Peter clenched his jaw, but she wasn't done. "You became Spider-Man because you were grieving your uncle. Maybe it's finally time to grow." Before she could finish, Peter snapped, "Who are you to talk about grief?" His fists clenched as his anger boiled over. "I'm not the one risking my life as Jackpot because the fake kids I was taking care of ceased to exist." Silence. MJ's face fell. Peter's own anger faded just as fast as it came. His voice softened. "MJ, I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." She cut him off, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, it's true." And for the first time, neither of them knew what to say. MJ wiped her eyes, her voice unsteady. "That's why I became Jackpot. You're right." She hesitated, then admitted what they both knew. "But it's just a temporary solution to help me figure things out." She looked at him, her expression softer now. "That doesn't mean it has to be a permanent one for you." Peter stayed silent, so she pressed on. "Stop being Spider-Man." She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "Let someone else handle the crime lord. The Vulture. Every villain with a ridiculous name. There are a million superheroes in this city, Peter. I'm sure one of them will get around to it." She turned away, her voice quieter now. "And you can finally move on." For a long moment, Peter didn't respond. Then, finally, he spoke. "No." MJ turned back, surprised. "I couldn't live with myself." His voice was steady now, firm. He wasn't angry, just certain. "If the crime lord did something terrible, and I had the power to stop him?" MJ's voice trembled as she stepped forward, hands pressed together in desperation. "You have the power to stop him from doing something terrible right now. To the people you love, you just have to walk away." Peter shook his head, his voice breaking. I can't." His hands were up like he was trying to push the idea away. "I know that would make you happy. You've never wanted me to be Spider-Man." MJ's expression hardened. "You know that's not true. You know what?" Peter's voice cut through the room as he turned away. "This isn't your problem anymore." He stormed toward the door, anger and frustration bubbling over. "I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're not together." "Peter, wait." MJ reached for him, desperation creeping into her voice. "Where are you going?" Peter didn't stop. His jaw was tight, his steps quick. He didn't even turn around. "I don't want to talk about it any longer. Besides..." The door swung shut behind him, leaving MJ standing there, her words unspoken. Cut to Peter, now in costume, now in action, now very much otherwise occupied. Because at that very moment, Spider-Man was locking lips with Webhead, tangled in her arms like this was the most important mission of the night. And just like that, Peter Parker, the man who couldn't walk away, had somehow managed to swing straight into the most ironic situation possible. And that's where this issue ends. What happens next? How will Peter react after that kiss? Be sure to check out the next issue, and if you haven't already, watch how his date with Linda went. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next.